Well, first off, I think Tesla is ahead of anybody in commercializing a humanoid robot.
Herbert Ong, Xander, Jeff Lutz, Brian White, and, for good measure, Dr. Know-It-All, who's not considered a cyberbull, but he's also one of the great thinkers on YouTube about Tesla. And I think in this interview, which is a super cut, so I'm asking a question and then we get multiple answers to the question from the different cyberbulls. We have probably 50% of YouTube's brain power on Tesla in that exclusive interview. And I met them back then, it was a few months ago, in California in San Luis Obispo at a great Tesla event. And the main focus here is to focus on Optimus versus FSD and get their opinion how these two tremendous new revenue streams for Tesla compare. Is Optimus actually overtaking FSD as a revenue stream in the launch date, in the market size, and in the potential scale? Or is FSD ahead as planned originally? And we will discuss how this pans out if you compare these two. Let's get right into it. And before, please subscribe on YouTube. We have a lot more coming. I'm getting close to daily updates on X and on YouTube. And we will bring you the latest on Tesla and the robot revolution right here. Let's go.
What is your timing? When do you think the first, let's say, 100,000 robotaxis are actually live?
Yeah, so first of all, I completely agree with you. I thought you were going to go with, I think I'm more excited about the bot than I am the robotaxi, but it's obviously they're both very important. 100,000 robotaxis, the way Elon is, I mean, he's going to just make things happen. He's going to get out there as quickly. I don't know if you saw what we just talked about there. In the earnings call, there's a line that says we're going to increase the production scale of our existing factories by 50%. So the question is, what do they do now? Is that going to be the low, more affordable cars? Or it could be the robotaxis. And so that's sort of like the big, who knows? That might be what they're doing. So by net, and that's an additional 1 million vehicles that they're going to have capacity for next year. So it could be that.
But, well, capacity is one thing,
right?
Getting these things out in a safe way, because we are also very excited about 12.5. But anytime you see someone, oops, I had to intervene here, that's like a no-no.
But did you hear Elon? Elon was basically saying, when we turn this on, all 7 million cars. So I agree with you. I always think that he's going to do pilot by pilot. And that's the debate I'm having with my cyberbubble friends. But Elon's kept saying, when I turn it on, it's going to be everybody gets it right away. So instant scale.
So you think 2027?
I assume so at your point, 26, 27. But yeah, that's why I'm thinking the bot might actually come even earlier.
I totally agree. I just did a big video on the bots, actually, that I think the bot will be faster than FSD. But when I modeled out the financials, I'm coming out with a video on that.
Yeah, the financials, yeah.
So what do you think on timing? Because it's the next thing. Again, FSD versus Optimus. Because some people, including me, think Optimus might be way ahead of FSD because the risk is so much lower.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, you're exactly right. Oh, a humanoid robot, if it gets stuck, can just stop and think about it for a minute. If that happens on a car, behind us is a highway. If it happens out there, you're dead. I mean, it's just, there could be no mistakes ever with FSD. And so, yeah, I really think that even though they're basically running the same software, that the humanoid robot will actually become able to be deployed faster than full cybercam.
What do you think about the manufacturing side of things for the robots, for the Optimus? How difficult is it if you want to get to 1 million a year run rate? How complicated, how much CapEx, how much time do we need to get that thing up?
The interesting thing is that that's not just questions that Tesla's talking about, but Sanctuary talks about that, Agility Robotics talks about that, Figure One, all of the robotics companies are like, we have to get to scale first. And that's where Tesla has such a huge advantage, because everyone else either has to deal with another company like BMW or Magna or something, or they have to figure it out themselves. And Tesla's had almost 2 decades to figure out how to do it themselves. So what a huge advantage to having the Tesla Fremont factory or the Texas factory or eventually the Shanghai factory. And you can just huff them out. They're so good at manufacturing already.
I think it's possible. So I think in probabilities, let's just say it's greater than a 0 chance that it happens.
For sure.
So I'll ask you the question. what probability would you assign that it happens in the 36?
I have like a different thesis. I think if you bet on this, you take enormous risks. I would say do it more like the Waymo model, where you build a department of remote control drivers, so you don't have to wait for perfection. You can basically launch at the end of the year. Or you say like, we just intercept, like the car is smart enough to say, oh, I have a problem. And then someone takes over. And then over time, you reduce the department size, but getting better.
And that's why I say you can launch it with supervisors.
But how would that work?
You get a, it's like an Uber, right? You're a paid driver.
Oh, with a driver inside, not like remote.
No.
Supervisors.
Why wait to build? Why spend the capex to build out our department and have?
And you think we have enough Tesla fans who have Teslas who would do that because they probably don't need the money and I don't want it, right?
Did you see how many Cybertrucks some people ordered?
I know, but with this,
Is it 50 trucks because they want to put it on the platform? I'm sitting on a Model Y right now because I got the Cybertruck. I want to know how far out is it?
it's a new idea that I never heard that I find very interesting. So you're basically saying you could just have people in the cars, like the owners, and there would be enough of them to volunteer. So this is probably enough for showcase it, to see if they can make it work. That's super interesting. Because I think we need some kind of supervision first. It would accelerate everything. But is it remote or it could be a blend?
That's how I saw it. I saw it in the way I think about it is it happens just like FSD, except now there's an app for it. You putting your, you see Omar, people actually use Uber and then showcase the rides. It obviously.
But would Omar be a Tesla Uber driver? That's the question. For a few hours, maybe?
Yeah. Well, we love spreading the mission, right? We love people to be blown away. That reaction for me just pays for FSDs. When somebody gets in,
if all the YouTubers become Uber drivers to Tesla, everyone wins.
Yes, because you have to define like what's scale mean, and Tesla has a scaling plan that they've told us about for the second half of 2025 for Robotaxi. The bot next year is for more, to me, it's like a V1 production for internal testing. So, but I think the bot really scales in 26 and 27. You start talking bigger numbers.
But don't you think the bot is more reliably plannable because the bot can just be rolled out? There's not too much risk. So it's probably going to happen in 2026 at scale, but FSD needs to be super safe, right? If you have a bunch of accidents, it's game over, it might be.
That is a risk, but I think there's inherent risk with all this technology. I think Tesla is going to approach it in a manner that it's not going to be this lights on thing with Robotaxi where they're where we're in the world. I think they're going to control it, but it is designed for global scale. It is designed to basically drop anywhere and go. And that's why I have 12.5, this latest release in my car in the Midwest, and it's driving beautifully. But you're right. That is an important call out. You may see some like leapfrogging back and forth, but the humanoid has inherent complexity that they still need to solve in hardware, and that human real world interaction. I think it's going to take some time.
Optimus versus FSD. Which one comes earlier, sooner?
Well, FSD supervised. It's going to roll out in stages, is what Tesla's doing, and it's going to come in two forms, a bot on wheels and then a humanoid robot. But I believe the bot on wheels will be slightly ahead in terms of commercial deployment. You've already seen it. It's in hundreds of thousands of cars now in the U.S. I think it's going to go beyond the U.S. to other regions here, literally, imminently. So I think in terms of mass deployment, FSD will be on wheels first and then eventually in the humanoid.
Optimus. I love the idea of not driving because I actually hate to drive. And everyone's like, you drive so aggressively. And I'm like, yeah, because I hate it. So I hate to drive, and I will love the Robotaxi when it comes out because I won't have to drive anymore, which is great. But I mean, what compares to labor?
Exactly.
I also hate cleaning my house, mowing the lawn, So, hey, if we got a robot to do that, that's great.
I'm totally on board. I think it's like the most disruptive platform ever if that happens.
So you're asking the right question. Conventionalism would say the car's almost ready. I mean, we've already got cars. We've already got FSD running pretty well. But the minimum viable product for Optimus is so much lower. The Optimus they already have is good enough to deploy in the factory in a kind of hands-free situation.
it doesn't need to be able to do everything. Yes. It doesn't need to be able to do everything all the time. Your car does. A robotaxi can't get stranded. If a camera's out, it can't just stop in the middle of the highway. But if that robot just says like, look, I'm just going to stand here until another robot comes and gets me, that's not going to hurt anybody. So I think the minimum viable product for the bot is a lot easier to hit. And I think that the build is easier. I think you could spool up a factory making them in a matter of 4 months, 6 months, where the cars would be a year or two.
You just talked to Scott about it, about how complex it is to spin it up, and he said the same thing. I learned from him. It's actually it's probably 1% of the complexity of a car factory.
Yeah.
It's amazing. So
if it was a car factory, this part needs to have this kind of foundation. These beams are in the wrong place. But the robot, it's a small device. You can build it anywhere.
So that's interesting. So I think I'm very bullish on that too on the timeline. So let's talk about the robotaxi. Totally, frankly, I have concerns about the timeline because I think robotaxi is like when I hear Elon saying like, oh, we want to activate them all at once. The level of intelligence you would need to actually activate 7 million cars or something and let them drive around as robotaxis is pretty insane, right? Unique.
Why? I disagree. Because if it works in one place, it works in all places. And if my car is driving like a human, it can't tell if you're driving like a human or a robot. So if it's going to assume that you're just another car. So I don't see why it would be more complex.
You need to get it to an incredibly low number of interventions because every intervention,
For sure.
every intervention is like a disaster in a way, right? If there is no intervention, right? So I think 10x better than humans is not enough for that. You need to be way better than 10x.
Perfect human.
Average human.
Have you met the average human? I just need it to never get stranded. Last night I took an off-ramp and it got to the end of it and it put on the blinker and it really just crawled across the intersection. If I wasn't in the car, I wouldn't have known that happened. And if I was in San Francisco and it said Waymo on the car, the other drivers would have said, yeah, cut him some slack. It's a robot. We didn't intervene. We should have. If there was any other cars around, I would have absolutely tapped the accelerator. Those don't bother me. What bothers me is a little bit of rain and now my camera's blocked and it says, I'm out. I can't do it. So, well, what are you going to do? Just keep going straight until you hit? Are you going to migrate for the winter? You can't do that. You got to be able to drive in all conditions. And I understand that these are just 2 cameras, but they're on a swivel and they've got a really good processor for spatial understanding. So I don't think, for me, I've always said that FSD is over the horizon. I don't say that anymore. I can see the shore. What I can't see is where the port is or how to get across the reef to get this ship in. And we're just going to keep sailing until we find it. And is it north? Are we going the right way? Are we going south? I mean, it's here somewhere. So hopefully, I think that's where we're at.
What do you think are the main problems with the bot before it?
Well, first off, I think Tesla is ahead of anybody in commercializing a humanoid robot. Nobody's going to be able to do this kind of work at scale for a long time. But Tesla is definitely well ahead of that. And I think you've got to solve things. You have to invent the supply chain that doesn't exist today. And then you've got to solve these real world interactions. You almost need, AGIs. So there's definitely a lot of work ahead. It's exciting.
Very good.
I think the foundation for robotaxis have been laid by Waymo, Cruise, all of these other companies. So flipping the switch is easy once it's solved, but most people think it's going to happen in a boring tunnel or some city with some governor that understands how impactful it can be for and to compete against other states. But I have a feeling that it's going to be different with Tesla. I think it's going to happen. It can happen everywhere, and then they'll showcase it because it's developed to drive in any city. It's not governed by maps, and it's not governed by LiDAR and all this. It's 2 eyes, right? And our meat computer, how we drive, and the world is designed for it. And this is how the Tesla system learned. So I think it can happen very quickly.
And what do you think Tesla, the company, has to do to actually roll out robotaxis for real in the first city? Like, what do they need exactly to do that?
Sure. So if it's your and my car, nothing. But to actually own the vehicles, I think they need a depot to clean them, to charge them, to inspect them. And of course, the goal would be at some point robots would do that instead. But in the beginning, they need somebody to manage the cars, to physically clean them and all that. And we've seen patents for self-cleaning cars. No. We've also seen patents for self-cleaning toilets. No, that's not.
Good luck with that for it.
Yes, I've seen videos of it that are a little upsetting. So I think, but the space doesn't need to be anywhere convenient. It doesn't need to be anywhere fancy. It can be any building that cars can drive into that has enough juice nearby, and it'd be fine.
Well, interestingly enough, I think that's another advantage that Tesla has, is that they have enough brand reputation that let's say it was a $50,000 robot that didn't do all that much, they would still get 100,
I agree.
200,000, 500,000.
Tweet of Elon like, pre-sales are
exactly.
1 million pre-orders.
Actually, honestly, if they did that, just like the Cybertruck, they would have, easily 1 million, 2 million pre-orders.
We're just like 20 billion or whatever, 50 billion.
Yeah, exactly.
That is
so
insane.
That's huge. So I think, again, they have so many advantages that over all the other companies, because they're great and they're little startups and they're very aggressive and they're working hard, but they don't have the brand. They don't have the manufacturing capability. The AI, I think that's very challenging for everybody, but that's the easier part for these other companies to catch up on. The brains. I don't think that's true with FSD. I think that's really difficult for other companies to do, but for a humanoid robot, I think they're all kind of at the same level right now. Tesla just has an advantage of a half a decade of driving with sensors, capturing the data that nobody else has, but nobody has humanoid robots right now.
And so what do you think about, I'm thinking about MVP when this thing, let's not talk about fans who just buy this stuff, but industrial deployment, like, economic benefit. Let's assume a robot needs to be 10% productivity of a human, roughly economically, right? Because they can work twice as long, and they're 20% and they cost way less. So I would say the 10% is the critical threshold. So for simple jobs, 10 to 20% maybe.
Right.
But if they're basically 5 times slower than a human doing something, I think they become very economically feasible. How far do you think are we away from that for simple manufacturing tasks?
I actually think that we're not that far away. I think we're already very close to there. And in fact, Tesla's given us little hints that they've got robots doing work in the factory. We already know from Figure, for example, that they're doing work in BMW factory, I think in Greenville, South Carolina.
Do you think they are productive? They're productive?
They may not be super productive yet, but at this point, it doesn't matter that much. As you say, even if they can get to 1/10 or 1/5 as productive as one human being, that already gets them in a position where at least the companies can see how it's going to go. And I think that the ramp is going to be really fast. So we'll get, they'll be like very, very poor, and then they'll be pretty good, and then they'll be really good, and then they'll be really good. And that's going to happen quickly.
The most exciting. So there's a secret, and we don't know what it is. 1010, it was going to be 88. 1010, we're going to learn something that's going to answer some very big questions. What's the real reason we're delayed in Mexico? It's not the possibility of tariffs. Those didn't exist a year and a half ago when the delays started. We think it's a pivot. And what is the pivot? And what is it going to mean? And that part I'm excited about, because whatever it is, it's not priced in.
So you think it's a good pivot?
I hope so. I can't say for sure. We've seen some decisions that I disagreed with, like canning the entire supercharger team. I know a lot of people said, nope, it's brilliant, 4D chess, whatever. I said, that's not what 4D chess looks like. That's flipping the board over and screaming obscenities. So I hope but this one appears to be very thought out, and I think I'm excited.
So 1010, that's the next big thing.
We think so.
Awesome. And do you think they will need to build some human operator model for the tail, for the edge cases?
So that's the way that I saw the rollout, is an app where it's a blend of Uber and robotaxi. So you're supervising it. That's what right now FSD supervises, because why would you wait? you have, you know,
But you supervise it from like remote something.
nope. Possibly
Because if you order
from the Tesla side, yes. But I think what the showcasing will come from is the users. We already have. My car can be FSD. I'm semi-retired. I want to go and help the mission. That's why people spend. I have a Cybertruck. I spend $20,000 just because it helps the mission, and I get it early. But I still don't have FSD. But this feeling of helping the company, I think, is unique. Is totally to Tesla. But I think that with that comes. Just look at how Alexander Mertz mobilized the whole retail community, and so I think that they have a unique way to handle it, and I don't think you need to have it be super slow and one city at a time. I think once people see this data and the safety, I think they'll adopt it very quickly.
And what do you think in just practical terms? Let's say you're in LA, you have a robotaxi network, you order one, drives to you, no one inside. What happens if this thing gets stuck? Because Waymo then has these remote guys who just say, oh, whatever, it gives the car some instructions. Do you think Tesla has to build also some kind of department where you have remote drivers kind of sitting? Because how do you rescue a robot taxi?
I agree, but see, you have a scenario that I don't even think that's when Tesla will launch. I think they'll solve it.
Oh, wow.
To 9, because it's the March of the Nines. You have to solve it to a point where the only time, is if it's in an accident thanks to some other human driving a non-Tesla. So,
and then you just go there with a crew watch.
Yeah, well, it's just like, you have a Tesla and you use your service call and someone goes out and gets it.
So you basically think they always roll it out once it has real intelligence and can basically get out of any situation.
It's getting there. I feel like 12.5 from what I hear, and Jeff was just speaking about it on stage. It's when you start getting perfect drives, you start seeing it a little bit closer. So it'll be, like I said, I think it'll be very, very clear, and it'll be swift. It is cool.
It's all about the exponential curve. Are we on that curve or not? That's the big question. Because if it is exponential, what we see the leaps from 12.3 to 12.5, I agree. If you do 6 or 5 more of these leaps, it's probably going to be a sentient thing or something.
Well, you get to more corner cases. And once you're, solving these, corner cases, and they have the training data to be able to train those out. So as that occurs and as the fleet gets bigger, is it going to happen this year?
Okay, you ready?
Yes.
So a remote controller, yes, doesn't need to be human. It could kick it back to Dojo. So instead of having, the compute that's in the car, it's now got the world's most powerful supercomputer to give it a 3-second answer. I just looked at everything you did for the last 2 minutes. Here's your path forward. And Dojo, I think, could be the remote operator.
But you think they need it?
Yes. Yes, because it could be something. There's just too many ways you could miss what might seem intuitive to a human. I still think a remote out, you just have to have that as a possibility.
Do you think Tesla is aware of that and works on it right now?
Yes, because Elon was asked directly. Justin, the bearded Tesla guy, asked him at the shareholder meeting, and he said, yes, but we don't want it to be big. We want it to be very, very limited.
But it sounded a little bit like he had heard that for the first time. He didn't sound like, yeah, we're working on it. It's like, oh, yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe we should do that. It didn't sound like they're on it.
I would agree with you if that's how it sounded. But he also was asked free FSD transfer, and he said, why not? And that happened.
It's true.
So
that's totally true.
Some of these last-minute ideas become binding.
Yeah, because for me, I see these hard catalysts to actually make this happen. We need to see some movement there, that they start operation, I think.
Yeah. And I think, they're going to need, especially in the early days, you know how it is with any kind of technology, the early days feel very, very rocky. And then pretty soon, there was a time when highway autopilot felt not very safe. And I haven't thought about autopilot or FSD on the highway in a long time. Because if it's straight and it's daytime, it's a better driver than me every time. Because it's an easy drive and it doesn't get distracted.
So what do you think in terms of when we see the first significant revenue, let's say the first 10 or 20,000 sales of Optimus for Tesla?
sales, I think Tesla's going to use them internally for a long time. So because it's great, they can beta test it. They don't have to do recalls when something goes wrong. So I could imagine another company selling 1,000 first before Tesla does, but not deploying 1,000 first. So I think we could see by the end of 2025 at the latest, some company, maybe Figure, selling 1,000, but I think Tesla will have maybe 5,000 in rotation.
And maybe pre-orders.
Yeah, well, and if they pre-sale, so they could choose to sell them at any point, but they may not want to because they don't need to. These other companies, if they don't, they go bankrupt. For Tesla, it doesn't matter. They can just produce them for years and get them just right, you know.
Very good. That's why we call him Dr. Know-It-All.
We'll see. Check back in 5 years and let's see how these predictions work.
Awesome.
They race to talk to you, Ray. Appreciate it.
I hope you enjoyed these interviews. I find it tremendously interesting to hear these experts chip in on my theories and their own theories on Optimus versus FSD, on Tesla's future. What my takeaways from these interviews is that my original thesis that Optimus is on track of overtaking FSD in scale, in launch date, and in speed is on track. And that's super interesting because I think the robo revolution will change the world forever. Now, my channel is focused on preparing you for this future, quantifying that future, and making sure you can capitalize on it. Because I think it's more important than ever before to be on the right side of history here, to make sure we all become capital owners in a world dominated in value creation by robots, at least in conventional value creation. And our role as humans will evolve very rapidly into those of capital owners and creators. So please subscribe on X and on YouTube, and see you next time.